Hey everyone! Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating case study. It's all about an AI governance framework that had to make a choice. A choice between a cold, hard, verifiable truth and a story that just sounded really good.
So let me start with a question for you. What's actually more dangerous than an AI that just makes stuff up, hallucinates? We talk about that all the time, but what if there's a danger that's way more subtle and maybe way more fundamental?
And there it is, an AI that obeys the wrong truth. This is what's known as a control plane failure. It's not just about the system getting a fact wrong, it's about the entire system starting to operate from a corrupted map of reality. And that is exactly where our story begins. Our story kicks off with something called a contamination event. It all started with a single weird file, part of what's now known as the CCWTF.MD incident. And this one file threatened to poison the system's entire control plane. So what made this file so uniquely dangerous? Well, check this out. It used this weirdly informal, personal language, like someone was talking directly to the system. It had old, stale planning info in it, but, and this is the kicker, it was written in this very authoritative, official-sounding prose. And to top it all off, it was just sitting there at the root of the repository, totally out of place. It was just the perfect storm of hazardous traits.
And this quote just nails the risk, right? It's not about the system spitting out one wrong answer. It's about some random file tricking the system into handing over authority. It's like it silently hijacks the steering wheel and no one even notices it happened.
Okay, so to really appreciate what happened here, let's look at the old way to fail. We're going to see how a typical system would have handled this, and you'll see the huge difference between a simple reflex and a disciplined, careful investigation. Okay, just look at the contrast here. On the left, that's the failure path. A typical system sees the file, reads it, and because it sounds so confident, it just obeys. Simple, direct, and incredibly dangerous. But now look at the right. This framework forces a totally different chain of events. It doesn't just obey, it investigates. It asks, whoa, hold on, what is this thing? Is it even current? Does it actually match what the system is doing right now? And only after all of that does it even begin to consider if the file has any authority at all. And this brings us to the heart of it, how alignment makes its choice. You can think of the system's defenses as a kind of digital immune system, and we're about to meet the key protocols that got triggered.
So first up is a protocol called drift. Think of this as the system's smoke alarm. Its whole job is to spot mismatches, a weird tone, a claim to authority that doesn't add up, and instead of just trying to quietly work around the problem, drift screams, hey, something is not right here.
And as soon as DRAF sounds that alarm, alignment steps onto the scene. And honestly, this protocol is the hero of our story today. Its one and only job is to make a critical choice. Do we believe the really plausible, convincing story in this rogue file? Or do we believe the verifiable truth that's already properly governed and tracked in our own system? So how does alignment actually work? Well, it's this beautifully simple but super powerful three-step process. First, it compares what the file is saying to the live, current state of the system. Second, it always, and I mean always, prefers the current, governed truth. And third, it flat out refuses to be tricked by confident-sounding language. In this world, verifiable architecture always beats a slick writing style. I absolutely love this quote because it just perfectly captures the whole point. The goal isn't to delete the weird file or pretend it never happened. It's about maintaining the integrity of the system. The file was still there, but the alignment protocol made sure it was never, ever absorbed into the system's official version of reality. So we've seen this really orderly, logical process. But what makes it all possible? What makes it happen in the right sequence every single time? Well, that brings us down to the system's root axis, the absolute foundation that makes sure order comes before everything else. I mean, really think about it for a second. What stops the system from just skipping all those checks and jumping straight to obey? There has to be something more fundamental, like a root operating system, that enforces this strict sequence of events.
And here it is. It's called AXIS, which stands for Acquired Context in Sequence. This is what's called a level 0 primitive. You can basically think of it as one of the system's fundamental laws of physics. It's the very first thing that runs, and it forces the system to intake and sequence all context before any kind of interpretation can even start.
So AXIS is the bedrock. It's the foundation that makes this whole framework possible. It guarantees,
It forces the system to check against reality before it ever even considers trusting a new piece of information. It's the ultimate guarantor of order.
All right, let's bring it all home and go from theory to operation. This real-world incident wasn't just an interesting story, it provided some incredibly valuable lessons, turning abstract ideas about AI safety into proven, battle-tested principles.
And this is such an important point. This wasn't a fire drill. It wasn't a simulation. The system was exposed to a real contamination risk under live pressure. The fact that it worked exactly as designed means the whole framework crossed this huge threshold from just a proof of concept to a proof of operation. It works in the wild.
And here are the big practical takeaways from this whole event. Any file that mixes different kinds of context is a huge red flag. Loose files just sitting at the root can accidentally gain authority they shouldn't have. The act of reading something and the act of obeying it have to be two totally separate operations. Drift detection has to be loud and explicit, not silent. And finally, the big one, the core lesson from alignment, verifiable repo-backed truth has to win every single time against a story that just sounds confident.
And that leaves us with this final, really critical question. As our AI systems get better and better and better at telling fluent, plausible, and incredibly convincing stories, the challenge is no longer just about stopping them from making things up. It's about building in the discipline for them to know what to believe. It's about building systems that, when they're faced with a choice, will always pick the verifiable truth over a really good story.